Wait, do you want that to stay in or no?
No, I mean, no,
Okay.
but no.
Hello and welcome to Saving People Queering Things, the supernatural podcast where we are the homoerotic subtext of supernatural. Today, we are pulling up to season 5, episode 9, The Real Ghostbusters. I am your host, August, and joining me today are my amazing co-hosts, Elayna and Noah. How are you both doing today?
Fantastic. Oh, this episode was a great one.
I'm feral for Dean Winchester as per usual.
I mean, how could you not be with the homoerotic subtext everywhere?
Scared little boy. We're gonna get there. So we have thoughts and feelings and emotions.
Before we get there, though, we need to catch you all up. If you haven't watched Supernatural recently, here is what you've missed on the road so far. First up, Elayna, you are going to recap the show so far. I am going to count you in.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so Sam and Dean are brothers, and they hunt bad stuff, and they get really angsty about it on the way, and they have a lot of daddy issues and mommy issues and just family issues in general. There's a lot of like dying and coming back to life, and then also more dying and coming back to life, and then there's a apocalypse that gets started, and then a gay angel shows up. It all gets very confusing for especially Dean, because he's like, what am I sexuality even? And now we're in season 5, and I don't know what's happening.
Did anyone?
Incredible.
A disaster.
No, you pulled through. I liked it.
Nailed it.
Season 5 and I don't know what's happening.
I think that's very funny because I know you do know what's happening because you've watched the show an insane amount of times. You very much know what's happening.
But you have to limit what you say.
And I don't know what's happening.
Well, speaking of someone who doesn't know what's happening, Noah, are you ready to recap the episode?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Because I just want to talk about this episode already.
Please.
Okay, let's go.
There's so much here.
Lead us right in with a recap. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so the boys are summoned to a supernatural book series convention by Chuck, but actually it's Becky. And so they have to quiet a haunting while also surrounded by cheap imitations of themselves left and right. Everybody doing deep voices for Sam and Dean. And maybe they have some inner realizations. We'll see. We get a Bella mention, and then they save the day in a roundabout way. And that's it. That's all I had prepared. Oops.
That was marvelous.
That's great.
You hit the key points. You brought up Bella, which, yes.
And we also have a reference to another character that we haven't met yet, but we've got a Wild Crowley reference.
Yes. Oh my God.
Which I was wondering if you picked up on that.
I was so excited. I was like, fuck yeah, of course Bella's the intro to Crowley, because like Crowley's so great and iconic, and it would have been sad that those two characters had never met, because they would have had such a fun relationship. So I'm glad that they did connect.
Like when it got to that point, I just immediately picture you watching the episode being that like Leonardo DiCaprio like pointing at the screen meme, like
yeah,
I know him.
Hey, he's coming. He's here. Wait, let me see what I said in my notes. Yeah, Becky brings up Bella. She never really gave the cult to Lilith. Crowley! Lilith, Crowley! That was it.
Amazing. Love that.
Very excited.
Well, it's now time for us to pick some music to accompany us as we set off on this grand journey into fan convention weirdness. Here's what we have this week. Elayna, you want to go first?
Yes, I would love to. So my pick is entirely weird and slightly selfish, but it's because it's a fan convention episode. As I was thinking, like, what song would I pick? The only song that came to mind was a song that I always associate with fan conventions, because it was a prominently featured song at one of the first ones that I ever went to. The song is Shut Up and Dance by Walk the Moon.
Good choice.
Phenomenal.
That song, every time I hear it, I am transported to 2015, where I hosted a Super Hulock meetup, and everybody just had a really great time and was jumping around to that song. And so, given that it's a fan convention episode, just immediately took me back to that moment and that memory. So that is my contribution to the mixtape this week.
That's beautiful.
I love it. Noah, what do you got?
I went with If I Were You by Black Bear featuring Lauf. Beautiful, fun little, can't say fun little ditty about every fucking song. It's a stellar track where it's sort of how Dean is approaching all the imitators. You know, if I were you, I would see through all the lies that I'm living and pick something different before I disappoint you or let you down in some different way. So
Nice. I think that fits really well.
Good decisions made. What about you, August?
My pick is Throw Away Your Television by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I wanted to go with something a little bit meta, and so this is you know, obviously it's the book series, not the television series, but we're going meta. We're going meta. And
you gotta throw away your TV.
Gotta throw away your TV. You gotta live in the real world. Oops, the real world has monsters. Sorry about that.
Sucks.
Yes. Seem to hit our kind of our two fan protagonists that we get in this episode.
Damn.
Thought that would work. Yeah.
I love that.
Now we got our mixtape. It's time for this week's hunt. And today we are exploring the 9th episode of season 5, The Real Ghostbusters. Not to be confused with the Ghostfacers, as we've met earlier in the show. This is The Real Ghostbusters.
I'm a little disappointed they didn't show up in this episode.
It is a bit of a bait and switch. I do remember that being disappointed as well the first time I watched this.
Yeah, they get you. You get all excited about it. And
I feel like during the recap when we were looking over the titles, I was maybe that's a Ghostfacers.
Yeah, you definitely did predict that this was a Ghostfacers episode, and I was preemptively disappointed for you.
We could neither confirm nor deny.
You know what? Regardless, it was still a great episode, and I had a great time. So it's okay.
So hard to lose with this episode. Well, there's some moments where we lose, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
This week, tarot card. If you haven't joined us in a while, season 5, we are picking our themes based on the Supernatural Tarot deck and kind of using that to guide our discussions. And this week's card is a very special card. This week's card is the Chariot, which in the Supernatural deck should not be hard to guess what features on the Chariot card.
I wonder.
It is our beloved baby.
Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to read the card and then Elayna can give us a little bit more context as to what themes we might find ourselves discussing this week. The Chariot symbolizes forward momentum, willpower, drive, and triumph. In Supernatural, the Winchesters' Chariot is Dean's inherited 1967 Chevrolet Impala, the car that carries them through the many trials and triumphs of their journey. Dean and Sam have a firm belief in their moral convictions and the importance of their job each time they set out on one. The Chariot suggests you take a leaf out of their book and go after your goals with determination and courage. Even if you can't quite see where this new road leads, your confidence will ensure you are triumphant. Which I think is interesting, the meta element of this card for this episode. You know, thinking about perception and how Sam and Dean are seen by the fans of the books. But Elayna, you want to...
Yes. So was really stoked this is a card. I always say that, but it's always true. This one, the Chariot card, if you look back at the original, well, not original, but the classic like Rider-Waite tarot deck, the imagery for it is really fun because obviously it depicts, you know, a person riding a chariot going forth triumphantly. But something that's kind of fun about it is it's in the traditional card art, it's being pulled by like these two sphinxes. So when I saw that, I immediately was like, oh, this is Sam and Dean. It just like that for some reason jumped out to me. But the card itself is definitely, like it says in that guidebook, it's very much about victory and willpower. And, you know, one of the lines I have in the deck that I use is a really great deck called Mystic Mondays. And this one line that they have in their guidebook is, the road may have a few bumps along the way, but with determination, confidence, and inner drive, you'll get through it safe and sound. And for me, like thinking about this card in relation to the episode, that's very much how like the end of the episode kind of felt. Like, even though like it was a really weird situation for Sam and Dean to find themselves in, like having these people all reenacting their lives, you know, we'll get to it more later in the episode, I'm sure, but just the way that the guys, you know, that Sam and Dean are working with perceive what Sam and Dean do is very much reminding me of the Chariot card. Like they see Sam and Dean as heroes even when Sam and Dean don't. And so I think there's this nice little moment towards the end where Dean kind of feels that for once, like, yeah, like maybe we do something good. And so I think that that's where the victory kind of comes in with that card.
Yeah.
I think those themes are going to be some that we're going to come back to. I think this meta element, the idea of what makes a hero, I think that's very fitting.
Yes,
absolutely.
So let's get right into it. It's time for our main discussion of this episode. What did you think? Where do you want to start?
Noah, gut reactions.
Becky was back and in a big way.
You can't see me like cringing in my seat. I'm
but you can
cringing in
feel
my
it.
seat.
August like just deflated.
I have things to say about Becky. Actually, I have things to say about how Becky is written.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a fan this episode of.
Not a fan of Chuck either, and his
Yeah.
his whole thing with Becky. I loved when he was doing his stuff solo. Whenever he was fixated on Becky, it was so uncomfortable.
You're like, why? She's like, it's this like hero worship that she has towards Sam and Dean, this sort of like simpering, gross, like
childlike,
non-consensual, like
creepy.
And then she turns it on Chuck, and you're like, this is just as bad. You're just turning it on a different person now.
She's turning it on a different person. But yeah, the thing with Chuck that creeps me out though is that he's on the opposite end where he's like, he would like to be like worshipped and acknowledged and like, and it just
God.
Which okay, wait.
Yeah.
If that's your thing, that's absolutely fair and valid. It's different if you trick somebody into it rather than them being consensual from the get-go.
Yeah.
And
this doesn't feel as honest as that sort of kink, you know? I don't want to shame anybody out there for this.
You do you in your relationship dynamics. If it works for both of you, like, you do you.
This is not that.
This is not that. Well, and the problem with Becky is that
could be a thesis for this whole episode. The problem with
she is a caricature of a female fan, and she reveals a lot about how the writers of Supernatural at this time thought about their fan base. Because this fan convention, you look at the audience, it is 95% white men.
Thank you.
There are like 3 women, and the only female fan that gets any sort of like screen time is Becky. And the only thing she is interested in is banging the characters. That's the only thing she's interested in, just to be really, really clear. It's the only thing she's interested in. And it's really it's a really interesting look at the way the writers felt about their fan base and who they thought their fan base was, and also the liberties they felt was okay to just basically reduce their female fans to Becky.
Yeah, I have in my notes the phrase fundamental misunderstanding of your own fan base. Just at like every possible level. Like the audience in that convention room is the audience that Eric Kripke wishes he had drawn in, which was, the like loser guys who want like, these, manly men to look up to. Like that's kind of this terrible trope that he's portraying. And he even like it comes across in like Dean's dialogue where he's like, oh, you get to get out of your mom's basement. Like, which is just gross. Like even so it's like you're even demeaning the guys who are fans. Like you're demeaning every person possible while also just not understanding who is watching your show.
And Elayna and I went to a con this past year, a Supernatural con, and this has been true of Supernatural cons for a long time. The demographic of who's at a Supernatural convention is flipped from this one. Like it's probably 95% women and gender nonconforming and trans people. It's probably 95% of the fans. And that's not to say that like there aren't male fans, because there absolutely are.
Yeah.
Yeah, a few.
No.
We met some of those.
No, yeah.
But like the fan base as a whole, this is not an accurate representation of it.
Our listenership is also 95% female or non-gender conforming.
Yeah. And even back when this episode came out in 2009,
it always has been.
That was, I think, already the case in the fandom.
Yeah. And they were salty about it. So they decided to write Becky as this, and that hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think it's interesting, this is going to be jumping way around, but the 2 male fans that we get to spend a bunch of time with, I think it's really unfortunate that like those male fans go from being kind of pathetic and easy to make fun of to becoming heroes who know the truth and take it seriously. And they actually contribute to hunting. They become heroes. Whereas Becky also knows that this is all true.
Yeah,
she doesn't take it seriously. She gets mocked both in the show and in the like meta narrative of the episode. Becky exists to be mocked, even though she knows, like, it's not like she's someone who like thinks it's all fictional.
Like she's the reason they're there.
Yeah, she knows they're real.
And even the 2 guys that end up hunting with them at no point believe that they're actually Sam and Dean.
Oh, because they don't need to, because that's not really what's important. Like,
yeah, because I think
not necessary.
when they experience this like actual supernatural thing that occurs to them, they just assume that like the supernatural like world is real and that that's what Chuck has been writing about. But they're still, I think, under the firm belief that like this is a fictional story. Like they have no reason to believe that these exact events have transpired for these two guys.
Well, there are millions of ghost stories and spirit stories in the world that are not like Supernatural didn't come up with the idea of the paranormal.
No.
What do these guys do afterwards? I'm curious about, like, do they just go back to their normal lives? Do these two become hunters? What happens to them?
By the way,
Stereos.
Barnes and Damien are their names. And
Yes. Thank you.
Barnes was in Psych.
Of course he was.
God,
Of course he was. He stood up for the first question. I said, I know him.
It's a psych sighting.
Yeah.
Supernatural strikes again.
There were also some queer representation. Like, that was fantastic.
Yes.
I loved having that.
Yes.
Now that's one thing.
Who we have.
There were subtle clues that, and like, it was like, but it wasn't confirmed until the end. And then it was like, yes, fucking say it with your full chest.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I picked up vibes.
You didn't know it going into this episode, though, that.
No, I didn't know we'd have a queer sighting in the wild in Supernatural. Today, of all days, I'm so happy.
They don't die.
They don't die. They leave happy.
Yeah, like with their head.
They leave
resting
together.
on their shoulder.
Stronger than before.
Hey, howdy, partner. Like, come on.
Yeah, which
it's so
all I
good.
want.
And Dean is the one who interacts with them specifically.
Okay, all right. So
moment,
that's where we are.
I
Okay,
mean,
going.
okay,
let's go right for it.
let's jump to it because it's a very meta episode. We'll have a very meta approach to it.
So many feelings.
Okay, there's like layers to this because there's layers to this, and I never know how I feel about this particular writing choice because I love that we get a queer couple. I love that we get an explicitly queer couple that are allowed to be affectionate. All these things. I don't love the writing choice to be like, yes, these two who are a romantic couple will obviously choose when they're LARPing to be Sam and Dean, who are brothers. I don't love that. And it's always been, it's another nod to like the fandom of Supernatural externally to the show, but it's a nod to something in the fandom that,
it's not great. It's only better if you possibly just think about the fact that they met online and they were just like
and there's no cast in the show. Like in the books that they know, there's no cast.
True.
So they don't have that option. They're both male presenting people in their regular lives. From everything we know, they're both cis male presenting people. So there's two male leads. Like they don't see it doesn't inherently mean like Wincest. And I don't like to talk about that on this. Like I never like when we have to come to this, but I think we have to come to it because the show comes to it.
Yeah, it's not great. It doesn't make logical sense for them to choose that. I mean, besides the only other choice, like that's it. There's no other option except for a bad guy. Okay, but they they also know that Bobby and Rufus are in this universe. First of all, because that's who Sam and Dean choose as their aliases, which is fucking wholesome as fuck.
Do you think it's Sam and Dean that choose that, or do you think it's those two that say you're Bobby and Rufus?
Oh, I've always thought it was the guys, like you're Bobby and
I love the idea that it's Sam and Dean.
Immediately says, I'm Bobby.
I've never considered that, but it's a way better headcanon.
I love that so much more. I like the idea that that's who they gravitate towards.
Yeah.
And
so
then
who do you guys want to be, Bobby?
They're in this world where everybody's coming up with aliases just like they do, so
and
they
Dean
can't
Bobby?
pick one of those. Yeah, Dean is Bobby, and that is so good.
Yeah. That's very aspirational.
Yes.
We know who you look up to. You're not going to pretend to be your dad.
Nope. Could have said John.
Could have said John and Bobby. Didn't. Said Bobby and Rufus.
Bless them.
Which
is good.
Is good.
Sorry.
Is good.
All that to say, they could have chosen Dean and Bobby. They could have had that sort of.
It's just an unnecessary choice on the writing part too, because then what it does, kind of subtly, is it kind of equates this queer relationship with like incest. It kind of does that little, like very subtly, non-explicitly, it kind of just plants that there as parallels to each other.
And it's
not great.
Awful.
Uh-huh.
We can say it's awful.
We don't like that. We're not a fan of that. And I don't want to harp on it a whole lot because I don't want this to be the episode where we have to talk a whole whole ton about Wincest, but it's my hesitancy with this episode.
I have always felt that as well. That is like a point of like, oh god damn it, guys, you got so fucking close and just went right past the point.
They're queer and explicitly queer, but
the way that and this is maybe just traumatized mind trying to rationalize it in a way that will make it palatable, but I've always kind of thought of it as that's the only reason that they do that is not for the Wincesty kind of reasons or connotations, but because that's who each of their favorite characters are.
I'm hoping that, I think in universe I can accept that. Yeah. I think I don't love it from the writing perspective because I think for the writers, it's absolutely a joke. It's absolutely a joke, kind of a joke at queer people's expense and kind of a joke at the Wincesties' expense. And neither of those is great.
Because as much as we love the fact that they have the homoerotic subtext of Supernatural, the part that's frustrating about that is that we as fans find it funny because there's all this homoerotic subtext related to but not between the two of them.
No.
Yeah.
And that's the part that's annoying. It's in there because the writers are trying to poke fun at the Wincest shippers, as opposed to acknowledging they actually just have a ton of homoerotic subtext with other characters interacting with other characters.
Especially at this point, like we are halfway through season 5, and now that with Cass, we have so much of that already in season 4 and 5.
Like Free to Be You and Me has happened up to this point. Like, that episode, pretty gay.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because they're making fun of the fans for seeing what they have legitimately put in there, which feels a little gaslighty, where you're like, we're not seeing something that's not there. Just because the fans are enthusiastically seeing it and picking apart it, like isn't just because like they want to see it. Like fans are not as stupid as this episode presents.
No, definitely not.
Because even the other fans, they're all either really weird or intentionally off-putting or kind of mean. Every single fan in this episode.
Yeah, there's like...
No one's just like a normal human who's also a fan.
Yeah.
Until the end. Until you get the revelation of those two guys by the end. But even they are like presented as kind of weird for enjoying this story so much.
Yeah.
Which is very 2000s, I think, perception of like nerds.
Media in general, honestly.
Yeah, I feel like because of, I could be wrong in saying this, but I don't know. This is just my perception as a person who's viewed and studied media over the last like 2 decades or whatever.
Or whatever. Like that's not a huge achievement.
Like
you can own it. You know your shit about this.
Step up with your full check.
You know what? Okay, fine.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Please say your
We're gonna actually shut up and let you share your expertise now.
I'm done being supportive. My bad.
That's like that line in The Office. I'm sorry I offended you with my friendship.
Okay, wait, no. Finish your thought. Sorry, you'll lose it.
No, I'm not going to lose it.
Oh, good. I would.
Am I? No, I'm not. Over the last like handful of years, like because of things like Marvel and Game of Thrones and even like Star Wars, which is a property and a franchise that's been around for quite some time.
And referenced in this episode.
And is referenced in this episode. But with the purchase with Disney buying it and starting this whole new line of content, it has made Star Wars more, I don't want to say more popular.
Mainstream is maybe the word you're looking for.
Mainstream is absolutely the word I'm looking for. So being a nerd has become more of a mainstream kind of thing. Not necessarily in all of the ways that I feel like people who are deep in fandom.
Especially niche fandom, like Supernatural, which Supernatural is.
Yeah, and people who participate in fandom, and I know, August, you're gonna love this, but like people who participate in fandom the way that Trekkies participate in like that's what Supernatural is.
Yeah.
And especially at that time, that was super considered weird. And so like it's really those kind of biases of the time kind of really come across in the way that the episode is written. And I'm so curious what, like, if this episode were like, if Supernatural were on and in its 5th season right now, and there was an episode at a fan convention, like, I wonder what that would look like and how different that would be because of the way interactions with fandoms have changed over the years.
If it was still a book series, not a show yet.
I think we have some answer to that I think there has been portrayals of like fan conventions and things in more recent media, and it's much more enthusiastic and sympathetic and much more humanizing. I think of shows even like Mythic Quest, which is an Apple TV show about creators of a video game.
Oh, cool.
Danny Pudi, who's in Community, is one of the leads in Mythic Quest. Anyway, I won't go on a whole Mythic Quest tangent, but
told me with that sentence.
yeah, it's a great show. I do recommend it. They have an episode that's at a convention and it's very celebratory. Like, yes, these people are a little weird. Like, yes, these people are not, these fans are maybe not everyone experiences a video game the way these fans experience a video game, but they're not mocked for that. They are in a community that is celebrating fandom and they're having a lot of fun with it. And the way the show tells that is not as a mockery. And I think that's maybe, I think there's lots of other examples of that as well in popular culture.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't to say that there isn't. It's just like, I mean, specifically related to Supernatural. Oh, yeah. How would, and we kind of
I don't think this episode exists. I don't think this episode can exist in modern, if Supernatural's coming out now.
What I will say, and I'll leave it at this, like this particular topic, because it would get into spoilery territory, is that
I'm glad you're mentioning this because I was going to.
When we get to season 10, I feel as though we get a redemption arc of how the writers view fans and the levels of respect that the writers have for fans.
I would say, I think we fully get that by season 10, but I would even say in season 7 we get a portrayal of a person who is a fan that is very respectful of fans.
I have just disrespected my favorite fucking character.
You're and I am the monarch of all monarchs in the fandom. Anyway, we're not going to say more, but
how dare.
Yeah, but you are absolutely right. It happens even sooner than I mentioned, but Supernatural does, I think, do a good job of redeeming itself for this shit show.
I mean, it's got enough time. It should, right?
And that's 5 more seasons than Smallville.
That's 5 more if you're counting.
And fan culture changed a lot between 2009 and 2013 even. I was 14 when this episode came out. I was 18 by the time the season 7 episode, and I remember watching that evolution, even in my own life of being a fan when I was a teenager and being an enthusiastic part of fandom culture as a teenager was a very different experience. On Tumblr, it was much more niche. I didn't have a lot of real life friends who were also fans in the same way I was a fan. Whereas I think even a couple of regularly, I have potlucks at my house with my friends every couple of weeks. And the amount of times that we end up in debates about fan culture analysis, we'll be watching some show and we'll all be sitting there debating it and analyzing it. And I can pull out my analysis skills from years of being in fandom. And I'm not speaking a different language to everyone else in the room. And that might be partly my friend group, but it's also, I think, because fan culture has changed and it's become a lot more mainstream. And I think that has happened really fast. It's happened in the last decade.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was kind of trying to get at, is just that it's happened radically. This level of nerd was not socially acceptable when I was in high school.
No, or me either.
Any stretch of the imagination.
It really gets me whenever, people start speaking that same language out in the wild. You run into someone and you're wearing a fandom shirt and it's subtle or whatever, and they pick it up and they speak that lingo. That happens more often now, a lot more than it did back in the day.
Yeah, I spend less time explaining references now.
Yeah.
One of the greatest nerd moments of my life was when I met this random person and we were having a nerdy conversation. And I was like, you know what? This is my chance. I have to take the opportunity. And I told this person that I like their shoelaces.
They were wearing flip-flops.
Yeah.
And they told me they stole them from the president. And I can tell you, we both screamed and hugged each other, even though we had 30 minutes prior. It was fantastic. Because this was not at a fandom convention. This was in the lobby at my job.
Like, yeah.
And it was beautiful.
That's a wonderful moment. And to bring it back to this episode, these two fans, Barnes and Damien, they say they met online in a Supernatural chat room.
We all met each other.
Yeah, we're in we just met in a more, contemporary version.
Yeah. We met in a Supernatural DM, basically.
Yeah, we met on a platform talking about this show, and I think that's kind of cool.
I hadn't really thought of it from that angle, but now it's making me have an emotion, and I don't know if I signed up for that.
For all the ways that this episode kind of fails in portraying fans, there's also some ways where it accidentally succeeds.
Yes.
Those two panel titles.
And we talk about the Dean panel, because...
Scared little boy.
Frightened little boy.
Sorry. The Secret Life of Dean.
The Secret Life.
Which, that paired with the homoerotic subtext of Supernatural just hits you 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
The secret life, like we think about being closet, like all of these things that just sort of like go along with the way we think about Dean and the way we talk about Dean on the show.
Yeah.
And how Dean is just so oblivious to actual queerness when confronted with it. Like,
There's no idea what to do with it.
Just doesn't, just
He says,
just
howdy.
defaults right. Yeah, defaults right to his freaking cowboy fetish and just says,
It's a whole choice that he's made.
yeah, like that's like of all the things you could have said, that's where you went with that, Dean.
We just had the Dr. Sexy reference. Like we just had that happen
Moments
last episode.
And
Come on.
we also talk about this was, I think, in this rewatch, my favorite moment of that I'd like never really noticed before was the profoundly genuine look of two things on Dean's face as he's leaning on the car immediately after that interaction. It's consideration and satisfaction.
Acceptance. just
acceptance. Yeah. Just this yeah.
I was worried about that moment because I remembered it slightly differently than it actually is. I think I remembered his like expression being one of more of like uncomfortableness. And like there's a flash of that, but it is not as profound as I remembered it, or I built it up in my brain to be.
Of being mortified that he got social cues wrong, then it is, oh no, these are queer people. It's not exactly. It doesn't come across like that. It comes across as like, oh, I'm sorry, like my bad.
And also like a little weird that you're pretending to be me and my brother. I think it's those two things that he's more like, oh, about. It's not the like gay people thing, which I was pleasantly surprised to be like, oh, that's actually how I'm seeing it now.
Love
that was my favorite part.
I'd like to applaud the banner behind them in this because it looks homemade and it looks awesome and it is way better than any Supernatural convention banner I've ever seen.
It makes Creation Con designs look like freaking trash.
Look, this whole con makes Creation Cons not look great, which is saying something because this con doesn't look that great either. I mean, if you're making Creation Con look good, I mean, no offense, no shade. I'm sure I enjoyed it, but oof. There's that got the t-shirt.
The worst part about this con, in my opinion, is the fact that the little ghost hunt that they are sent on as part of the event of the convention is signed Love Dad, like from John. Like John ever wrote them like a Karen note like that and ever signed anything Love Dad. Like no fucking way. Get your head out of your ass.
If you wanted to be accurate, they should have had it be a voicemail where he just says, go to these coordinates and nothing else. No helpful information. He gives them way too much helpful information.
And offers them a $50 gift card.
Like, come on. John would never. It also kind of felt right after that, Dean is talking to Sam. He says, I don't think that guy's a good enough actor to be acting. Just feels like
an actor saying that.
Yeah, an actor saying that, and then they hit cut, and then the other guy's like, damn, Jensen, like what did I do? Like, fuck. I don't know. That was a little fun joke.
There's a lot of really fun little jokey moments. Like also the I think the fan that's Swedish. The Swedish fan that is like they're always losing their weapons. Why don't they keep it on some kind of bungee?
Their faces after, and they do the okay, that's weird.
And then they reference it again, like
it's kind of useful.
Come back to it, and they're like, "Hey, maybe we should." That's actually a pretty smart idea.
Which I really want to know, and I would not be surprised at all if this is something that the writers either pulled from something in fan discussions, because like
they have said stuff like that before.
And that's something I liked that they did with that fan in particular. And yes, it's played for laughs, but he also is just asking continuity questions and like practicality questions, which is also a part of like fan analysis. And I thought that was quite funny. Also, it reminded me of like Beth and Jamie from Driver Picks the Podcast talk about like having a salt-filled hula hoop would have been really handy. And this this whole bungee gun thing, also that's what it reminds me of.
Yeah.
Bungee? I'll see myself out. It's fine. I'll turn in my my badge.
Okay, this is changing a little bit because I want to hear what both of you thought about like the Chuck of it all in this episode. From a meta perspective, Dean says to Chuck early on in the episode, "Who gave you the rights to our life story?" Which
okay. That's a very complicated it really feels like he's pushing the narrative along a little bit in his own way because he's, I don't know, he's not acting maybe, but he's super broke and he needs to make more books. And so he wants to get back on that.
Like the notion of God saying, I have no marketable skills but writing. And not even but writing. I'm not a good writer.
Yeah.
I'm not some kind of hero that can just hit the road and fight monsters. Until the world ends, I gotta live. The supernatural books are all I got.
Listen, bro, same.
The season 15 vibes of this moment are very strong, and I'm very angry about it.
Valid.
Oh, interesting. That's your season 15 moment?
One of them.
Okay. I was like, because I have another
There's
one.
another one, but that's one of them. That was one where I was like, oh boy, like, okay.
Yeah, that is that hadn't hit me, but yeah, boy howdy.
His whole bloopers on stage, not bloopers, but his little extra cuts at the end. Specifically when he says, the way I see it, it's not really jumping the shark if you never come back down, you know?
Which
killed me.
Which is
so in a nutshell.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's just like, if that's already the way that writers are feeling about the show in season 5, this show, that might be the most prophetic thing Chuck says in this entire episode.
Yeah. That's fair.
Like, this episode could be called A Brief History of Jumping the Shark on Supernatural. Like,
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We had an episode called Jump the Shark last season.
Literally.
Yeah. Yes, we did. We literally did. Never came back down.
They were aware. I love it. Chuck is just such a character, and he really carries this whole episode.
And I love that God's favorite movie is Beaches.
Yeah.
Great. Phenomenal choice.
Terrible trash person, Chuck.
His favorite movie is Beaches.
Okay, other thing here, little note to like fandom nerd Dean towards the end. Dean earlier on in the episode is like, what the hell is going on? And then is correcting Sam on fandom terminology, where Sam's like, yeah, they're like, well, I don't remember what Sam says. He talks about like, they're playing Cowboys and Indians.
He said LARPing Cowboys and Indians.
Dean's like, get the term right. It's LARPing.
I like that he knows that.
Dean loves a cute little outfit or a cute little game.
Yeah.
That lets him feel frivolous.
He doesn't like love when it's someone LARPing as him, but like the concept of LARPing in general, Dean's like, well, I don't hate it.
Yeah, he might be on board with it. Who knows?
The way that whenever they're having that conversation and then they're trying to convince her to help, and Dean needs to go talk to the LARPers again. And so he pops over, he says, hey, just give her the puppy dog thing, okay? And then moves on and just goes back to his solo conversation with Barnes and Damien. And Sam's face in the background is, what? Okay, fine. Yeah.
Like, oh, so that's what we're calling it? Oh, I guess it will probably work.
I guess so. Okay, fine.
Another very meta thing, because it's like, that's a way people outside of the show talk about like Sam in early seasons.
Yeah.
There's so many moments where the characters kind of go outside of the story, kind of by accident, and it's quite funny.
That moment when he says the puppy dog eyes reminds me of Tall Tales when Sam's hugging him and he's like, you're too precious for this world. Like that really is just Dean's perception of Sam. And I think it totally comes from that, and I mean, mind you, I say this as a youngest sibling, but like I feel like that's the older sibling projecting that like the younger sibling is the small cute one that gets everything that they want kind of thing. And so like,
because it's true coming from an older sibling. Absolutely what happens.
Listen,
and it's hard to grow out of that.
I can't, as a youngest sibling, I can't confirm nor deny.
Every time my siblings mention some life, milestone that they've achieved, it's baffling. Whoa, no, you're still 14, right?
Yeah, it's like my niece, who is 10 years younger than me, mind you, but like she's baby, like she will always be baby in my brain, but like she's married.
That's a whole ass adult, Elayna.
Yeah, I know.
Wild.
22 years old. Nope, she's baby. She is small, and I can pick her up and put her on the counter and bake cookies with her, and she will be until she's 800 years old. And that's very much where Dean is at with Sam. He's just like, just go puppy dog eyes her, like you do with everybody else.
It's also Dean being like, I know how the books portray you.
Because
I read them.
Yeah.
Because they read them back in Monster at the End of this book. They read the books, or at least they read some of them. And
I don't know if they read all of them.
I would like to believe that Dean read all of them.
If I'm Dean Winchester and I am closeted and or figuring it out, and there are books
This
that
is research.
spell out my inside thoughts, I am making sure I damn well read those because I want to know what's out there about me. Like I want to know how I'm being portrayed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm reading every single
Every
damn
Tell
one
me
of
single
the
that
books.
other people knew I was gay before I knew? That's frustrating. Why didn't you say anything?
Yeah. Why would you tell me? Oh, you didn't know I was real.
Yeah. Well, also there's the whole like I'm full frontal on this one, dude.
Yeah.
From that. So like I think Dean, terrified, reads all of them after Monster at the end of this book.
And I think begrudgingly enjoys them by the end.
Oh, absolutely. I don't see how they, after the revelation at the end of this episode, how they don't go back and read them all now. You know, if there was this moment where Bella gave the cold to Crowley, and if they had known that earlier, it
So
would have been helpful.
Okay.
Obviously didn't read them super closely in that case.
No.
Which also is a hilarious, I think, like meta sort of comment because Becky's like, didn't you read the books? Like it's a very much like a pulling back the curtain and being like, didn't you read the books?
It
Don't
said
you
that.
know what the audience knows about this story? Like what the TV audience knows about this story? Don't you know that there are things in this story that you aren't being told? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of cool.
I
like it.
do know one moment that I will give a nod to the writers about that I appreciated was the moment where Sam gets mad at Chuck and it's like,
Yes,
you
where
didn't
is it?
think you had to mention that to us? And he's like, like I don't remember. Like I wrote it, but I don't remember. Listen, I've never related to a sentence more as a writer. Like once I write it, I wrote it. It's out there. I don't fucking remember this shit. I need notes. As I'm sitting here working on my second book, like I forget half of my first book and I constantly have to reference it and have it nearby because I'm like, I don't remember all of this stuff, even though I'm the one who created it. Because there's this weird dissonance that happens with when you create stuff.
It's like Chuck being up on stage and being like, thank you for your incredibly probing and rigorous questions. Like, it reminds me of like at Supernatural conventions when fans will go up and be like, Misha Collins, in season 8, episode 12, when you like stood a certain way, can you tell us about that scene? And Misha's like, what episode is that? Was I in that episode? Like, doesn't know.
I stepped off set and took 4 shots. What are you talking about?
That was 5 minutes of my life like 8 years ago.
Like, reminder that the fans always know the work better than the creators, honestly. In a show like with this kind of fandom.
This episode did where I was like, you guys got one thing right, at least.
Can I lead us into a little conversation about the Winchesters?
Yes.
Kind of by accident? Okay. It's in the scene where Sam and Dean are talking to the fans and they're like, why would the hell would you choose to be these guys? And then Dean says like, I'm not a fan. I think the Dean and Sam story sucks. It's not fun. It's not entertaining, blah, blah, blah. And then one of the fans is like, I don't think they care because they're fictional characters. And Jensen Ackles playing Dean Winchester. I'm not sure which one of them is saying this actually at this moment. Says, believe me, they care. They care a lot. And then Sam says he takes the story very seriously.
Listen, I had to pause it because I was like, this is the Winchester's inception point.
When I say that Jensen Ackles took back over the body, this is not Dean in this moment. Or it is, but it's also Jensen.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, like it's Jensen Winchester, it's Dean Ackles, like he am that he is.
Doesn't matter. It's a fictional character. They don't care because they're fictional characters, but you better bet damn well believe Jensen Ackles cares.
Yeah.
How you treat his character.
Yeah, that moment was, I think, the most unhinged for me. just seeing that and being like, and he really did. Like, he really ended the show and said, oh, believe me, they care. And made a whole TV show about it. The whole 13-episode television show.
So far.
Yeah.
Look,
yeah, we better get more. I hope we get more.
I don't, yeah.
Although, I don't know. We might not get more just because of a writer's strike. Who knows?
Oh, well, we know how that ends for Supernatural shows. They go on for
Usually
another
it works out
13
pretty well.
seasons, so
Yeah. So,
writer's strike can't keep them down.
True.
Power to them. I don't know.
The last thing that I want to point out is that also gave me big later seasons vibes, and if you know, you know, is when Sam goes, hey Chuck, good luck with the Supernatural book. Screw you very much. And then the like hotel convention runner guy says, fans of yours? And Chuck says, I'd say no.
I'd say no.
Again, you know, when you know who Chuck is, there just adds this layer of like, fans of yours? No, I'd say not.
Yeah, not so much.
Not fans of the story we're telling.
I also liked how when like right before they walk away, he says, if you want to continue the supernatural books, I guess that's okay with us. And he says, oh wow, really? No, not really. We have guns and we'll find you. Like, no. How many times do I have to tell you? No.
Sam doesn't get a lot of like great moments in this episode, but that is up there.
That whole little bit with him is like, listen, I'm like a theater kid Sam truther, and
Yes.
like in that moment he's like, wait, I can really sell this. Like I have a moment to pretend I am heartbroken for Becky, and I'm just gonna do it. And then he just like he does it, and he thinks that he delivered it so well that he's like, I'm gonna take it one step. Yeah, you can go ahead and publish those books. No, we'll find you. It's just like
Sam's like, no, remember, I'm actually terrifying.
Yeah, like we'll find you.
Back off.
Which I mean, given Chuck, my firm opinion is that there's no way that's stopping Chuck. Chuck's writing more books.
Oh yeah, Chuck absolutely did. He did.
Absolutely.
Oh, and also can't be missed that how do you guys feel about angels?
Trust me, they're not as lame as they seem.
Which
so good.
Is also like, is this a nod to cast specifically? Like, what is this?
This is a choice, is what it
choice.
is.
Like, don't worry. We know you didn't want this storyline, but like, not as lame as it seems.
But the whole storyline changes with just a couple more books. That's all he's got to do. Dean was taken to hell, and that's when it all changes.
Yeah. I do want to. I think I've recommended it before, and it does have spoilers in it. So if you haven't watched the rest of the show, or at least I think season 9, you will want to maybe steer clear of this one. But there is a fic that has a character, a later season's character, find the supernatural books and find much later books, and it ends up being a fic. It's a Destiel centric fic of this character finds the books, and it helps spark Dean and Cass' ability. It helps reveal. It reveals that like what's going on for Dean and Cass, and it's a nice little. It's a very cute fic. I will link it in the episode description.
Is it Charlie?
Yes, it's Charlie. It's Charlie finds the supernatural books.
Yeah, you have mentioned this fic.
It's a delightful fic. I will find it. I will link it. If you have seen later on in the show, like you can check the fic itself for, I think it's up to season 9 where the spoilers are, but it's very fun. And it does go into the like meta of it all and the idea that like these books kept happening. And at some point, Dean becomes aware that there are a whole bunch of books, and then he goes back and reads them all and is like, I need to know what's being said. I need to know all the things that I wasn't there for. And so he gets to go and like read them all, and Sam reads them, and it's lots of shenanigans. It's very, very really funny. Cool. It's very, very funny. Kind of cracky in the most delightful way. That's my recommendation of the day.
Love that. So my last note for this episode, and I think it's just one of the most wholesome ones, is the moment where Damien basically is just like, you are wrong about Supernatural. And just that whole moment is very much like I actually, as a fan, felt like that was the stand-in moment for me, where I was like, oh, the writers know who I am and what I'm going through for this moment. Because like, yeah, I'm a person I'm an administrative assistant. Like, whose world am I saving? Like, I'm printing papers and doing spreadsheets. Like, my life is by, a textbook definition, my life is boring. But these characters, getting to live through these characters and have these moments, like, who wouldn't want to be able to save the world, Like, it's just a beautiful, it's like a light in an episode that misunderstands a lot of other things, I think.
And the idea that, like, I'm not sure you get what the story's about. The idea that the fans are the ones that get what the story's about because they are the ones that bring meaning to it for themselves. Like, that's a really beautiful way of looking at fandom, that, like, ultimately, once it's out in the world, it doesn't matter what the creators ultimately wanted it to do. It only matters what it actually did for the fans.
Yeah.
That's a really cool way of thinking about fandom. And I also felt very seen in that moment.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, that seems like a lovely place for us to end our main discussion. So we're going to move into our Going Meta section, where we are talking lore, representation, any behind the scenes trivia, and anything else we haven't already talked about. Let's start with our representation chat.
Rep check.
I mean, we talked about fan representation. We talked about female fan representation. I would say another missing piece in the fan conversation here is there are very few fans of color.
Yeah.
Missing, like,
are there any?
I think there's one or two in the crowd. None that get speaking roles.
No.
Which, yeah, another huge, really important part of fandom.
Do better. Include everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They need to step it up with this representation on a whole overall.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
You're gonna be saying that for a long time. No, I hate
Yeah,
to.
it's so fucking frustrating.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
The number one most frustrating point of Supernatural for me.
Yeah, even when Supernatural does really good and really interesting storytelling, they flop on their telling of diverse stories and including diverse voices in their stories.
That's why Winchesters was so good, but who's counting?
We are definitely counting.
Yeah, it's us. We're the counters. It's we.
Okay, but most importantly for representation, we had a queer couple. And
Yes,
we've talked about them quite
did.
often, but I think it's
They
just
were
important to circle back to we don't get that many explicitly queer characters in the show, so we should celebrate them.
And not just a queer character, but a couple who are in a relationship who survive.
Happy.
The head leads.
It's really cute.
It's
It's
the
really cute.
cutest fucking moment of the whole season. It's so sweet.
And the fact that they
So
just say like we're more than friends, we're partners. They have that moment where they're able to be proud of like their relationship.
I love them.
So sweet.
It reminds me of a moment later on in the show with another canonically queer couple talking to Dean, where there's a similar where there's a similar misunderstanding where Dean is like doesn't realize that it's a couple until they explicitly say it, and then it's a really sweet moment.
And he short circuits once again and is like,
Yes.
wait, men
Is like that's
affection.
and then is very sweet about it and very kind about it and very accepting of it. And
he's
it's nice.
such a disaster bisexual. I love him so much.
It's so sweet. I love it. Bechdel test is a no though. Obviously.
Hard
Hard
pass.
no.
Becky's it. And then
Well, and the girl who's playing,
Nameless person who plays Letitia
right, she doesn't even get her
has
own
a
name, does she?
fun ringtone.
Is a very funny moment. The ringtone moment is a very funny moment. They let that ringtone play for so long.
They really did.
But yeah, no
she was
Bechdel
so
today.
scared to check it.
So just a note, kids, turn your phone off when you're at work. Put it on vibrate. Just put it on
Yeah.
vibrate. Don't break
You never
character.
know if
Especially
it's
if
going to
I
ghost kill you.
I don't know what kids you're talking to. I haven't met anyone younger than 22, no, 26, who has their phone on loud mode.
Oh yeah, I
Who
don't have my
does
phone
that?
on loud mode. I'm 28. I don't have my phone on loud mode, and I haven't forever.
I do
Jackie.
when I'm home.
Really?
If I'm home and I'm expecting a call, that's the only time I have my phone on not silent.
Still,
Wow.
I'll search for that shit while it's vibrating.
But that's
until I
right.
die.
I'm also an old though.
You're an elder millennial, Elayna. So you and I are like a little bit more that.
How sad is it that I'm only in my 30s and I'm already an elder gay? Like what? Frustrating.
Sorry.
It's cool.
So get this. I was looking into the lore. There's no like the spirits are very similar
Very
to
standard.
yeah, because that's not the point of
It's-
this episode.
It's not so much new lore, but it plays on established lore a lot.
Yeah, it does the little thing that I think Supernatural does really well on, which is you think it's one thing and then whoops, nope, it's not. It's another thing, but it is still the thing that they think it is. It's just another of the thing they think it is.
Yeah. Still
Yeah.
They
spirits.
got the person wrong.
Yeah. And I think the main lore in this episode is actually just like the world building of the Supernatural books and their place in the world more than it
Yeah.
is any like lore about supernatural creatures.
Yeah, I feel like the Chuck stuff is more the lore of this episode, noting everything that he says and how that's gonna have implications.
And now the brothers know about the, chat rooms talking about the books and shit, right? 'Cause
And
I don't-
And the cult comes back into play. That's
cult.
That's the big lore piece today. We find out, Sam and Dean find out that
yeah.
the cult is
Bella.
an option.
Bella gets mentioned again for the first time in so long.
That is, I hate to say this, that's the last time she ever gets mentioned, isn't it?
That probably is.
I'm not sure, but I think that might be correct.
Yeah, I can't think of a
Maybe-
single
I don't
other
think
time
she
after
becomes
this.
I don't think she becomes relevant again.
Maybe once they actually talk to Crowley for the first time, like, hey, we're looking for something that Bella
I don't
could-"
even know that. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to wait. We'll have to like pay attention for that when we get to
Yeah, get to those episodes.
those episodes. I think, but yeah, Crowley. We got a Crowley reference, and that's and we have a plot. We have like a direction for them to go because they've been kind of like not sure where to go in
because
terms
they
of
can't
their
find God or the devil.
yeah,
So,
and they also have no way of killing the devil if they
yeah,
do find him.
Yeah.
So now
But
they have a
now-
lead.
because Jesse's gone and also irrelevant. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're like, we had an entire being capable of maybe killing Lucifer, but he fucked off because he's a small child.
yeah, I can't really blame him. But
I think that's about it for lore, right? It's now time for our last and favorite part of the episode, our character blessings. Who's got someone they want to bless today?
I'm blessing two people. I would like to bless Barnes and Damien. Bless their hearts. I hope that they live very long, happy lives, that they do not get into hunting, and that
Yes.
somewhere years down the road, they are, cuddling on a couch, reading supernatural books and watching Game of Thrones and hosting a D&D campaign with their friends.
I hope that for them. I hope that for them. They just get to live happy queer lives.
Yeah. They get to be the embodiment of queer joy. That is what I wish for them.
Yes. I became so attached to them with this conversation, way more attached than I've ever been to them as characters.
oh yeah,
I've always kind of loved them, not for nothing. They've always held a very special place in my heart because of the revelation of who they are and how
They might
live.
be. Are they our first queer couple that we actually get to know explicitly?
Yeah, they are.
Because we've had a couple of queer characters,
couple.
but
Yeah,
I think queer relationship that we actually get to see
yeah.
between like named characters that we know.
Canonical queer.
Yes.
couple.
Well, yes.
Cannot.
Explicitly stated. Not even like
Yeah. Yeah, we all know. I'm gonna go ahead and bless Dean because my boy's going through it, having people making assumptions about him left and right, and some of them are on the money and some of them are a little exaggerated, and he's got to deal with people's perception of him, and that's a little rough. And
Dean doesn't like to be
it's a little
perceived.
uncomfortable,
No.
honestly, to be perceived. Especially when you're being perceived for something that you are not sure that is true about yourself.
and something you weren't necessarily aware was out there, like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know I was performing right now. Cool, this is my life. Whatever. Yeah, blessings to Dean.
Love it.
I'm gonna bless Sam. He has a really uncomfortable situation with Becky in this episode that he does not deserve. He has someone who just doesn't respect his boundaries, and that doesn't really get acknowledged by any other character of like how inappropriate that is.
It usually doesn't with Sam, which is really depressing.
Yeah, and it's, Sam deserves those boundaries to be respected, and he also deserves for there to be people in his life that take those seriously when someone is, putting him in a position like Becky is putting him in. And I just want to bless Sam and the like relatability of that for anyone who is like watching this episode and going like, I've been in that situation and it sucks. Like a blessing for Sam in that, because that's maybe a bit of a downer way to end the episode, but I thought it needed to be said.
It does.
Blessings to Sam.
And for his zingers at Chuck, because
Yeah,
they're
Chuck
good.
deserves it.
If this blessing segment has taught us anything, it's that consent and queer joy are two of our
favorite things. Yeah, again, that's a great place for us to wrap up. So that is all we have today. Thanks, Elayna and Noah, for a wonderful discussion as always.
No, thank you.
No, it's always a blast. This episode was so much fun too.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you liked it.
yeah. It's pretty up there on my list of faves.
I
It's
love the meta ones. Anytime it gets meta.
It's grown on me. I came into this episode being like, I know I like this episode, but I have some qualms. And I still have the same qualms, but talking about them, I don't know. I feel more affection for this episode now.
Oh, well, we love that.
I'm glad.
So make sure that you are subscribed to Saving People Queering Things wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to share our show with your friend. And don't forget that you can also find links to all of our social media and join our lovely Discord server through our website, queeringthingspodcast.com.
And if you are all caught up on Supernatural and want to go back to before the beginning, you can listen to myself and Elayna, along with our friends Beth and KJ, on our show Wayward Parents, covering the Winchesters. All of the episodes for that are out. So if you watch the Winchesters, or you're watching it, or you're rewatching it, come along for some fun discussions. Updates for that show are at Wayward Parents on Twitter or on Tumblr at Wayward Parents Podcast.
Be sure to ride along with us next week as we explore Season 5, Episode 10, Abandon All Hope.
Thank you for coming along for the ride, and we wish you a peaceful road until we meet again.
I'm I'm not excited for next one.
Yeah, this week was very fun. Next week's going to be different than that.